My name is V Noir, and this is the unofficial first episode of my new podcast. Now, what was I talking about? I say unofficial because the following comes from when I was trying to essentially, do this talking, um, podcasting, but make a YouTube. Oh, yes, buddy. Yes, buddy. Anyway, so I will be mentioning welcoming people back to my channel and whatnot. And yeah, just don't feel like you're having an aneurysm or anything when I say hello again later on, because I left in the original intro to sort of preserve the original context of the recording. So basically, going forward, I plan on doing about 2 episodes a month, like sort of a bi-weekly schedule. So maybe it'll be 3 episodes a month. We'll see. And then I plan on using YouTube as an archive for just the audio part of the podcast and then uploading at least once a month on YouTube an episode of the podcast with like visual elements, like I've done a bit with previous videos on my channel. So you can definitely look forward to that. I mean, of course, I'm like, at this point, you don't know who I am. So, but yeah, I like have a YouTube channel. I do artwork. It's not on that YouTube channel, but the YouTube is called Violet Noir, which is another name that I go by. I'm like, V could just mean so many different things, honestly, for me. But yeah, I'm like an artist part time. I've been taking a break this year though, or this later half of the year, honestly, because beginning of the year I was in a bunch of different art shows, and then of my studio space because of drama or whatever. Honestly, and I just wasn't really there. It just became a very expensive storage unit. So why not get a real storage unit? Either way, this podcast I will use as a way to talk about my current interests in different movies I've seen and different hyperfixations on those things as media, because in a lot of ways I start off watching a movie, thinking about the movie, and then I think about how it's connected to a different movie, and then I sort of go on tangents about how they're interrelated. And so in the what I'm about to talk about, um, is me talking about the movie Abigail that came out this year, and then how Dan Stevens he was in a different vampire movie called Vamps, and how that's completely different from the movie Vamp with Grace Jones, and then how one of the characters from Abigail is in a different movie that I saw this year, Lisa Frankenstein. So, very, very much a tangent person here. I'm gonna be all over the place, which is why it's called Now What Was I Talking About? Because sometimes I'll be too far gone and forget what point I was trying to make, which will hopefully be a lot of fun. I definitely look forward to doing it this way because honestly, I'm not a YouTube essayist or whatever. Like, I'm definitely a commentary person, but I don't want to be on camera for YouTube. I want to be on camera for my own art. Like I have a photography background. I've been trying to get into video making and stuff. So I want to be on camera for those reasons, not for YouTube. So it's very different for me. I'm fine with my voice. I mean, I'm on hormones, so I'm hoping my voice drops a little bit because of it. And it does feel a little different, a little lower. Like this is my natural sounding voice so far. And I don't know if you'll be able to tell the difference between what I sound like right now and what I sound like later on in this video. See, look, I'm stuck on videos already. In this audio later, because I recorded that like months ago, probably it was before June. It was in like May, and later on in that audio, I will be talking about Pride and how I've seen TV Glow. I saw the TV Glow. There we go. I saw I saw the TV glow. And I wanted to talk about it for Pride Month, but Pride's every day. Pride's every day. I don't I didn't really like I had fun, cried because I hadn't gone out in a while, in like forever. Mainly because COVID, and COVID is still very much a big thing that's happening, but our government doesn't care. But I still do covert precautions and stuff, and I still try to be out and about when I feel comfortable to do so. But anyway, yeah, so onward to the pod, I guess. Again, that the recording is before I decided to make what I was doing into a podcast. So I will be referencing having a channel and things like that, just FYI, so don't be confused. And so this will be the unofficial first episode, or episode 0. And then the next time that I do this, it'll be the official episode 1. So look forward to that in the next 2 weeks. I'm thinking I'm gonna do Monday uploads, so yeah, should be fun. Maybe I'll do yeah, I'm gonna figure out a structure and everything like that. But on to the show. Hi, hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is V Noir, and this week we are discussing a bunch of movies. The main one being the catalyst of all this, Abigail 2024. I was able to see this movie in theaters a few weeks ago, and upon watching it and also thinking back on it, it reminded me of all these other movies because I was recognizing actors from that movie and realizing, oh, that reminds me of this or this. And I kept going. So I'm going to not only discuss Abigail, I'm also going to discuss Lisa Frankenstein, Vamps 2012, and Vamp 1986. So let's get started with Abigail. So, to go into the synopsis, after a group of criminals kidnap the ballerina daughter of a powerful underworld figure, they retreat to an isolated mansion, unaware that they're locked inside with a not so normal little girl. And first off, I definitely recognize the actress who plays Abigail, Alicia Ware. She was recently in the Matilda musical movie adaptation, which of course they initially didn't promote that as a musical adaptation, but made it seem like it would be a remake. We saw this sort of marketing with the Mean Girls musical, but again they advertised it like it was going to be a remake of the movie. And it's like, no, we've been having a lot of early 2000s nostalgia things being redone as musicals on the stage, and then their popularity growing for it to get a movie adaptation. But I don't know what's wrong with promoting these movies as musicals, although I think at least Matilda got a little bit more promo, so you could tell that it was a musical. I haven't seen the musical adaptation, mainly because I love Matilda growing up in general, so the movie is so fresh with me. Although I was tempted to watch it because the actress playing Miss Honey is black, played by Lashana Lynch. And I'm like, okay, Miss Honey's black. Yes, I see you. Yes, I see you. But I was like, yeah, it's not for me. Uh, like I have an attachment to the original movie, and it's kind of weird to think of it in a musical sense. But I know I did a good job. So I was like, this is like a really great opportunity for this girl. She's like Irish, I think. So to go from one big movie musical to another sort of big movie where she's the main character is pretty remarkable. I think she's only about 13, 14. She has a really good American accent in this movie too. So I'm like, okay, so she can sing, she can dance, she can do accents. This girl is going places. But in general, with the movie, I really wish I didn't really see any of the trailers because it kind of gave away the fact that she's a vampire. Like, I wish it was more alluded to that, oh, maybe there's something going on, or, just something different about her. And it was more mysterious, but at least when watching the movie, there was like a lot of comedic parts to it. We did get Angus Cloud in this movie playing a character called Dean. It was his last movie that he did before he passed away, unfortunately. And I was watching some of the cast do interviews talking about him and how he was such a great guy to work with. He always tried to make them laugh and everything like that. And it's always nice to watch cast interviews and see that they had a good time on set because, of course, my cat just made something fall because he wants to be in my business. You're just so busy. Take a nap, buddy. Take a nap. Like your brother. Anyway, guys, I was like, where was I going? To think of like people dying on movie sets, like the Alec Baldwin situation that happened, or even a an older situation with like Brendan Lee from The Crow dying as well, or like that Twilight Zone movie and how those kids got killed because of that helicopter crash. It's like things like that can happen on movie theaters and or movie sets. So to hear people talk about how they love their co-stars and they had a good time, and Angus being like a prankster, and he actually came up with one of the really good jump scares that happens in this movie. There's a scene where Joey, played by Melissa Barrara. Okay, he's doing stuff. Anyway, Joey's character is going to her room. This is after they've kidnapped the girl, and they're in this sort of big mansion. And she goes to her own room and she turns on the TV. And then Angus's character jump scares her because he's in the bed with his like weird mask on to scare her. And that was just really funny. It was a really good jump scare, and I can't believe he was the one that came up with it.
He was magnetic. He was like such a light. Yeah, we're all very sad that he's no longer with us, but we're so like honored and grateful that we got to know him and that we got to work with him and that we have this, movie to dedicate to him, and he would have loved it. I think he would have had a blast. He would have been laughing so hard watching it.
And then in general, there were good special effects. It was all practical effects, lots of blood, puppetry, things like that. Loved it. Dan Stevens was in this, playing a character who used to be a cop, but he's trying to hide his Brooklyn accent, which was he was doing such a he's so good at accents, but in general, he was doing such a good job hiding playing someone who was trying to hide their Brooklyn accent because he would go in and out of the Brooklyn accent while you're watching the movie. I was just like, how he's so dedicated to this role. And so speaking of Dan Stevens, I, of course, in anticipation to this movie and in general watching it, I'm thinking about the fact that he was in a movie called Vamps, 2012, not to be confused with Vamp, 1986, with Grace Jones being a bad bitch, by the way, where he plays a son of Van Helsing. So he's the son of a vampire hunter. And to get into that synopsis briefly, blood sucking party girls find their destinies at stake when one falls for the son of a vampire hunter and the other encounters a long ago love. This was totally played as a comedy. Alicia Silverstone, Clueless alum, plays a vampire called Goody. Kristen Ritter plays her friend Stacy, who gets turned in the 90s. Kristen Ritter, you can recognize from shows like Jessica Jones. She's in this new, it's like new to me at least, Orphan Black show. Orphan Black. I was watching the trailer and they were saying it's coming out in June, and then all these other people are like, oh, well, I watched this last year. And I'm like, I don't, whatever. Anyway, Sigourney Weaver's in this. I don't know why they have a stacked cast like this. But yeah, Sigourney Weaver's in this. She plays Cicerus, who is the two women's stem, which essentially means that she is the person that turned them. Like I said, Dan Stevens is in this playing a character named Joey. Wallace Shawn, who like is in everything, comedian. Recognize him from The Princess Bride. He plays Dr. Van Helsing and is, of course, Dan Stevens' dad in this. And he's married to Kristen Johnston, who I recognize from Third Rock from the Sun. And I'm like, "Ugh, she's from Third Rock from the Sun. I love that show." And those are like the main-ish characters. Like Malcolm McDowell is in this, playing a character named Vlad Tepish. Of course, he's playing a vampire. And he's like, I haven't impaled anyone for 362 years. The two women are a part of a Vampires Anonymous group. They're called the Sanguines Anonymous, but they meet together and talk about how they're not feasting on human blood. They are consuming like animal blood, mostly like from rats and stuff. They're trying to live a good life, but there's this drama of all of a sudden all of these people are getting things like summons and stuff, and it's like they can't go into the little, daylight or else they'll die. So why is this happening all of a sudden? Like they haven't registered to vote, like their addresses shouldn't be current or anything like that, but somehow they're getting these summons. And of course, it's because Dr. Van Helsing is realizing that these people are probably vampires. And so he's using like a weird government loophole to get these people into the light. But anyway, so Stacy and Goody go to college. They're taking night classes. They work as exterminators at nighttime as well. Stacy meets Joey. They fall in love really quickly. Of course, Joey's dad, being who he is as Van Helsing, is like, she's undead. She's too pale. And he's like, you don't like her because of the color of her skin. And I'm like, oh, you guys, 2012. No. But yeah, so he still ends up, dating her. And then there's this weird scene where she's like trying to go home before the sun comes out, and she scales his building from his room, and he's like on the third floor or fourth floor, and he's like, what the fuck? And is, you know, afraid of her for a bit, and she's like, I don't want to kill you. Like, I am in love with you. And at the same time, Goody runs into an ex of hers from the 60s who was very much a someone who's a protester and things like that. And now he is a lawyer for the ACLU. His wife is dying, and they sort of it's not that they rekindle stuff, it's more along the lines of like it's just nice for Goody to interact with someone that she used to know that's still alive. So there's that. Like there's so many plots. So Goody has that going on, Stacy has that going on, and the overarching thing of the vampires getting summons, and also Sigourney Weaver being a killer. Like she doesn't care about this uh new lifestyle. She's killing people essentially. And they definitely hate her. She also thinks of them as dolls or mannequins because vampires can't see their reflections, so she uses them to essentially pick out her wardrobe, pick out her outfits, like she's just they're around her build and stuff, so she can kind of get an idea of what she's gonna look like in these clothes. Like that's all she uses these people for. Nothing else. She has a different henchman to help her find people to feast on. He gets murdered and they never bring that up now that I think about it. He just dies. Poor guy. And oh, I forgot to mention that this was directed and written by Amy Heckerling, who is the person who created Clueless. And apparently there was a Clueless show from 96 to 97, which is insane. I did not know about this show. And then she also created Fast Times at Ridgemont High. That was like her breakout directorial debut, which is really cool. And yeah, where was I going? Oh, okay. So going back to just to continue to finish up the plot of Vamps, which I thought was pretty funny, enjoyable, like a silly 2012 movie. Like it's silly. Like we've moved away from monster movies where we think of the monster as a primary antagonist, and now they are the protagonists, and we are rooting for them. Like monster movies have changed so much, and I'll definitely talk about that again when I switch back to Abigail. But to finish up Vamps, so they figure out a way to walk into the sun. They use the solar eclipse, which I thought only lasted well, I thought it only lasted a few minutes, but I guess it does last longer than that. To walk during the day, walk into daylight during the day, and they deal with the summons. They hypnotize people so that they don't have to deal with anything like that ever again. Stacy finds out that she's pregnant, but because she's a vampire, she will lose the baby initially. And so Stacy and Goody come up with it. They no, not that they come up with a scheme. They find out from another vampire, Vadim, who's he's just like so kind of sleazy. He's just like always flirty and asking them to be his wives throughout this whole movie. And he tells them that like if you kill your stem, you will become human again, which I feel like is one of the few, like aside from that and what we do in the shadows, where they also kind of discuss this idea of killing the person that turned you and becoming human again. Like I haven't seen that really in vampire lore like that. But the main problem about killing Sigourney Weaver's character is that Goody was turned in 1841, and if they kill Sigourney Weaver's character, Cicerus, which I'm just gonna go back to calling her Cicerus, if they kill her, she's gonna age like 100 years or so and essentially die. Whereas Stacy's only gonna age like 20 years because she was turned in the 90s. And this whole time, Goody has been self-conscious about revealing how old she is to Stacy because she wants to feel like she's young. And Stacy has like a whole thing about aging, which I feel like, yeah, that's such a thing that has been pushed on to people, which is crazy. But yeah, so what makes them fully want to commit to killing Cicerus is her killing all of these people in a Chinese food restaurant. And I was like, well, that's just feels racially motivated. Like, what? Why did she just kill? Anyway, so they're like, okay, we gotta get rid of her. She is not good. But they never knew where her coffin was, and of course they realized it would be in like a grand bougie area because she's so self-centered and conceited. And there's just like this whole fight. Her head gets attached to a skeleton at some point, which was kind of silly, kind of funny, and she dies, of course. And before we get to that, before I forget, Goody wants to help out her old love by having Vadim turn his wife so that she doesn't die. And there's like a whole scene, a whole weirdly erotic scene of him turning her. And he's like, let me know if there's ever any problems between you and your wife. Anyway, so she that was kind of a loose end for her before they went off to kill Cicerus. And so Joey, Stacy, and Goody step into Times Square. Stacy ages, but because she hasn't done drugs or drinking alcohol, she looks great. She looks fantastic. And honestly, she looks like she does in the Orphan Black trailer. Like, honestly, she looks better there than she did in the aging makeup that they did. And then we sort of go to Goody, and you watch as she's watching Times Square go from this, you know, huge towering skyscrapers to smaller buildings, horses and carriages, and then she ages and then she continues to age and then she turns to dust and dies. And I was like, I didn't expect this comedy to be really sad. What just happened? You know? Like I was like about to cry. I was like, I didn't expect this. Like what? Like I'm about to cry right now talking about it. And so Stacy and Joy, of course, keep the child, and it jumps to a few years later. They name their daughter Goody after her, and the dad, Dr. Van Helsing, is a babysitter, and the child is, making a silly face, and it ends up being like a vampire face, and instead of him getting upset, he's all like happy and stuff, and then the movie kind of ends there. And I was like, oh, that's really wholesome. He's not going to be all crazy about hunting vampires or mad at his half vampire child. And speaking of family, no. I mean, obviously, if we're talking about family, we're talking about Fast and Furious. I'm not going to talk about Fast and Furious in this movie. Uh, we're going to go back to Abigail, actually, because the theme of family kind of comes up because when Abigail is initially kidnapped, it seems like she's there and her dad's there. And Joey's character interacts with her. She's the main one to interact with her, or is supposed to interact with her. And Abigail asks her if she has any of her own children, and Joey says that she does. And of course, Abigail's like, well, I'm sorry what's going to happen to you. And then they all come together, and Joey thinks that, okay, maybe we kidnap the child of someone that we really don't want to mess with. I forgot what I was saying because I was trying to look up. Oh, okay. They realize that they come to a realization that Abigail could be the daughter of this really known mafia tycoon sort of guy named Christoph Lazar. And, now they're like, okay, actually, screw the money. We need to get out of here. And then they realize that they're locked in. And of course, they come across Dean's decapitated body and they're like, oh, shoot. So not only are we locked in here, but we're locked in here with an infamous killer that works for Lazar called Valdez, who, kills all of his enemies essentially like that. They do confront Abigail about this, and then they realize that maybe it would just be better to kill her and then move on and just say that Valdez did it. When Frank, Dan Stevens' character, shoots her, she heals instantly. And they realize that, oh shoot, she might be Valdez, and we're trapped in here with her. And so there's sort of like a cat and mouse thing going on for a little while. And of course, watching the movie, I'm like, okay, so they revealed that, but then what's going to happen now? And honestly, before I get too far gone with Abigail, I'm just going to tie in Vamp really quick because I should have just tied it in when I talked about Vamps, but things happen. Anyway, let's get into doing a little commercial break, I guess. We're gonna get into Vamp, 1986. Essentially, synopsis: two fraternity pledges travel to a sleazy bar in search of a stripper for their college friends, unaware it is occupied by vampires. And to kind of go back into what I was saying, where we sort of moved away from monster movies where you're not rooting for the monsters, you're rooting for the main characters, and in the end, the monster dies. I was definitely watching this and I was like, why did you kill Grace Jones? Huh? Just let her do what she was doing. You're gonna fuck up a bad bitch? Let her be a bad bitch. She wasn't harming anybody. I mean, she was, but nobody cared about those people anyway. They only fucked up because they didn't realize that the guy was in there with two other people. I mean, honestly, they really fucked up when the bouncer let in people who aren't 21 to a strip club. That's where they really messed up, honestly. But anyway, so you got Chris Makepeace playing a character called Keith. He honestly, in all of this, is reluctant to even go look for this stripper, but AJ, played by Robert Rusler, convinces him because he's like, "Are you sure you want to live in the dorm? Like, we could be in the fraternity and be in a nicer area, actually." And so, he's reluctant and then just goes on. And they're like, "We gotta get this Katrina character." Yeah, and it's just Grace Jones. And I'm like, you don't get Grace Jones, okay? You don't. No. um, but anyway, they convince this guy. His name is Duncan in the movie, but his real name is Ged Watanabe, who, you've seen him. This is the 80s, so he was playing a lot of sort of stereotypical Asian characters during this time. He was in 16 Candles playing like sort of a. This man is Japanese. He was playing a Chinese foreign exchange student. And I don't even want to say what his name was in that movie because it's ridiculous. But he's not playing it. I wouldn't say he's playing a stereotype in this movie, but he is playing sort of a comedic character that's a little annoying. And I'm like, come on, stand up. Be better. Because they need a car. Like, AJ and Keith need a car, and he's a rich guy, and he loans out his cars to people. But instead of acting with confidence and being like, you need me, I don't need you guys, he's like, please be my friends. And then they're like, we'll pretend to be your friends for a week. He's like, okay, I'll take it. And I'm going to come with you. And I'm like, what in the crap? Are you serious right now? Actually. Like, please, stand up. But anyway, so they make it to the strip club. All of the strippers here are so funny. Like, also the fact that Duncan is rich and he's not throwing down he's not throwing down any money. First of all, unexperienced strip club goer, throw down some ones or something. Anyway, they see Katrina. Finally, she's like the star of the night. She comes out. Her whole body is painted, and it was actually Keith Haring that did her body paint for the film. I was like, that's really cool. And she does this sort of interpretive dance sort of situation, and everybody's kind of just staring at her in awe. I'm also staring at her in awe because I'm like, what am I watching? What is this movie? Camp? Camp. This is camp. This is camp. And then at the end of her performance, everybody's just like, what? And then they clap. And she takes AJ to the back and she's seducing him and everything like that. And I'm like, lucky man. Lucky man. This is what he's saying before he dies because I'm like, of course she's gonna kill him. She's gonna kill him. That's the whole point of this, right? And this is like one of This is a more ugly vampire situation than like a hot, sexy vampire situation. Not that you can make Grace Jones ugly. No, you can't. But she gets her fangs out and everything, kills AJ. Keith is like, "Where's my friend? I just saw him go back there." And everybody's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't know what you're talking about." He leaves. Duncan's still there. Honestly, the fact that honestly, I don't even really remember what happens to Duncan. No, I think I'm gonna have to figure out what happens to Duncan. I'm gonna come back to that later because I'm gonna go back to talking about Abigail after I finish talking about this. But anyway, so Keith leaves. He finds AJ's body in the dumpster, and he's also getting chased by this gang who I initially thought was a gang of people that supported and worked with the vampires or were vampires themselves, but they were just bad people. And later on, they come across the vampires and they start fighting each other. And I was like, oh, I thought y'all were on the same team. I didn't know it was like that over there. But anyway, so it's just a rough night for AJ, honestly. And one of the hostesses there is someone that recognizes him, but he doesn't recognize her. And they kind of play this as like, okay, maybe she's also a vampire and she's fucking with him. And she wasn't. She actually did know both AJ and Keith in like middle school. And so, yeah, just rough night. AJ gets brought back to life. Now he's a vampire and he's kind of sent to kill Keith, but also before killing Keith, the police show up and they're like, ugh, we hate coming down here. Why did you call us down here? There's nothing going on. Your friend is alive, actually. So why are we here? Ugh, go home, kid. And like, yeah, actually just kick these people out because they're kids, actually. Give this club owner like a fine or something? Something? Anyway, police are useless in this universe as they are in real life. But they leave, and then AJ tries to kill Keith, but he's like, I can't kill my friend, man, friendship, and kills himself, presumably. And Keith ends up coming up with a scheme to light the whole place on fire. For some reason, the vampires in this universe are afraid of fire. Which, I mean, I feel like that's happened in other instances as well, but I was like, ugh, fire, really? All that guy wanted to do was go to Vegas. He was right. They should have went to Vegas. His character named Vic, played by Sandy Barron, who was in Leprechaun 2, which was also produced by one of the co-writers of Vamps. Or, see, I messed it up. Vamp, Donald B. Barchers. Borchers. He also had his hand in a movie called Little Witches, which came out the same year that The Craft did. And people were saying it was essentially The Craft. And I'm like, no, y'all are saying that because it is also a team of witches that are teens and women. Like, that's like, I need to watch this movie, but from the trailer, they're killing people, and people don't really die in The Craft. So, very different movies. Very different movies. But yeah, I'm like, it sucks because Keith ends up alive and he gets out with the person that knew him, and he ends up killing Grace Jones's character, Katrina, and he burns all of their coffins, yada yada. Actually, there was this really funny scene, and I thought it was kind of funny because Vamps also has that scene where Cicerus is attached to a skeleton and she's like trying to fight or whatever. So in Vamp, Katrina, sun hits her and her skin starts to melt and everything like that, and then she becomes a skeleton, and then she flips him off, and then like goes limp in skeleton form. And I was like, this is really funny. Okay, dark comedy for real. And yeah, thought that was funny. And I was like, ugh, really? In my canon, Katrina is alive, actually. And yeah. Oh, actually, no, I was gonna have Katrina related to Akasha because in Vamp, her coffin is actually like a sarcophagus. And I'm like, okay, so she's from ancient Egypt, obviously. So she's one of the first vampires. She should have been able to walk in light, obviously, like Akasha from Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles books. So, yeah, she's still alive to me. And Akasha is related to her in some way. Whoops, I hit the mic. Okay, so bit of a tangent. We're coming back to Abigail. This is not a linear review. So anyway, to go back to Abigail, Joey realizes that Abigail is essentially working towards getting rid of all of Abigail's dad's like enemies in order to get her dad to pay attention to her and give her some sort of recognition because she's been alive for however long and she's been alive as a child for however long, and this guy is her dad for however long. It's like to again bring back Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles. It's like if Lestat stayed Claudia's dad instead of Louis being Claudia's dad, like the more toxic parent continued to be the parent's child, which is sad. No, okay. I was gonna go on another tangent, but I'm like, we can finish this and then we'll talk about the other thing. But yeah, so Abigail does turn Sammy, who's played by Catherine Newton, and this was gonna be the other tangent, but I'll bring that back again. She turns her and she's able to use her as sort of like a puppet, and she ends up killing Peter, who's played by Kevin Durand, who I recognize from Smoking Aces. He was also in Lost, apparently, and he's in the new Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Also, apparently, he was in The Butterfly Effect, I guess. Love that movie. And oh man, I kind of overlooked it, but there's another character called. Oh, I should have just talked about all of the characters. I almost did. There's another character called Rickles, played by William Catlett, who was in Black Lightning, which is hella cool. But he dies, which is sad. Thankfully, he wasn't, because he's a black character, so he wasn't the first to die, but he did still die. But at least it wasn't like that trope of killing off black people before. And which they really had to kill Grace Jones. Ugh, hate it here. But she was one of the last people to die in Vamp, so I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, yes. Giancarlo Esposito is also in this movie. I thought he was going to do more of a cameo, but he's the one that gathers the group together, and we do find out that he works under Abigail and is also a vampire, of course. But he's like, I don't want to work for her anymore, actually. If y'all kill her, I'll be free. And he ends up turning Frank. And then, of course, Frank being a dirty cop, dirty ex cop, betrays Lambert's character. That's Giancarlo's character's name. He betrays Lambert's character and kills him. And then he thinks he kills Joey, but he doesn't. And at this point, we go from Abigail being a monster, and even though these guys are bad, you're still kind of rooting for them to not die in this horrific way. We go from that to now we're sort of seeing this like man who isn't great being played by Dan Stevens, dirty cop who's now a vampire, and now he's a powerful vampire, and it's only because of like the size difference. So now you are sympathetic to Abigail's character, and you already were kind of feeling sympathetic to her because you're realizing that she really is just a girl wanting her dad to give her attention and to love her, and when he's not. And so at the end of this, we're left with Frank, Joey, and Abigail. And we do know that Abigail's dad is on his way. Like, he actually legitimately is. And Frank thinks he's getting the best of Abigail. And honestly, he kind of is, because she isn't that strong compared to Frank in vampire form. And Frank, at this point, Joey and Abigail are trying to work together. Frank turns or tries to turn Joey, and then he thinks he can essentially puppeteer her like Abigail did earlier with Sammy. But no, he can't because he doesn't know anything. He only just became a vampire. You don't know those cool tricks yet. And so Joey bests Frank and kills her, and we again go back to this whole thing of kill the person that turned you, you become human again. And so that does happen. And then of course Abigail's dad shows up. And he's played by Matthew Good, and he's kind of just described as like father or Dracula. I think he's like Dracula in the credits. And they do actually in the credits do a dedication to Angus Cloud, which was really nice. And he shows up and he's like, he legitimately looks upset. And Abigail's trying to tell him, like, no, she actually helped me. I'm actually all good now. Everything's fine. And I want to say earlier in the movie, Joey does get bit by Abigail, but she doesn't turn her. And Joey's like, are you sure I'm going to be good for the son? And she's like, yeah, totally, totally. Just be good to your son. I'm watching. Well, it's kind of implied that Abigail is going to be watching her because the whole thing about Joey's character is that she's like a recovering addict. So she doesn't have full custody of her son. So she doesn't really see him that much, her son. And she's trying to do better. And so I feel like in like a sequel, it's like Joey being turned or something. It does definitely end with like Joey seeing her son again, I want to say. I did see this a few weeks ago. I really kind of don't remember, actually. We're gonna look it up real quick. Oh, okay. I think I have a headcanon of Joey seeing her son again. Because according to Wikipedia, she doesn't see him, but I have a headcanon that that's what happens. So yeah, that was the end of Abigail. See, I got through it without another tangent, but I am going to talk about Lisa Frankenstein, which is the movie I was going to go on a tangent about. But before that, we're going to talk about the directors. So this was created by a filmmaking collective called Radio Silence. It is Matt. Ooh, I don't want to mess up his last name. Bettinelli, Halpin, and Tyler Gillette. It's actually four people, but those two in particular worked on this movie together. They also did a movie called Ready or Not or Nar. Oh my god. I didn't know. I didn't do that. Oh my god. Oh my god, I can't wait to hear that played back because whoa, I hope I anyway, they made a movie called Ready or Not, and it came out in 2019, and that one was really good. I was happy that they committed to the myth. Not to give too much away about that. I might talk about that in the future, maybe. They also did Scream 5, which is, I think, how they worked with Melissa Barrera and got her onto this because she was in Scream 5 and Scream 6 with them. And yeah, this was really good. I'm excited to see more from these guys. I'm gonna have to go back and watch Scream 5 and 6, honestly. Oh, and then I was also seeing that Abigail was supposed to be a part of the quote unquote dark universe that Universal was doing, where they were sort of rehashing all of their classic horror movies, like how they did that new Mummy movie with Tom Hanks, and they teased the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with Russell Crowe in that movie. The Invisible Man that came out a few years ago was also supposed to be like a rehashing of one of their old Universal movies as well. But the thing is, they're not. It's like it's both technically a remake and it's also not. Like with the Invisible Man, I haven't seen the Mummy. I didn't want to because it's telling the story, but it's not telling that story, and so it just seems like the main thing they're doing is trying to keep the copyright. Honestly, is what my guess is, but they are giving these stories new life, and they're letting the creatives behind it, like the directors and the screenwriters behind it, do what they want with the material and the concept rather than having it be a one-to-one recreation of the old movie. So Abigail, while it was being while it was in the middle of production, was being called Dracula's daughter, like that was the working title. And there is a movie from 1936 called that. But even looking at the plot, which I will go into, it honestly, looking at that plot and looking at Abigail, they're not really the same. So again, it's a rehashing, but it's not necessarily a one-to-one creation. When Countess Myra Zaleska appears in London, mysterious events occur that lead Dr. von Helsing to believe that the Countess must be a vampire. That tells me nothing, actually. I think in this, Dracula isn't. Oh my god, is this the lesbian Dracula movie? Actually, I think it is. We're going to talk about this movie next month in June if this is not coming out tomorrow, which it probably won't. I have no idea, actually. I think this is one of the lesbian vampire movies, actually. Speaking of, now I can go to a tangent. So let's finally talk about Lisa Frankenstein. It came out Valentine's Day weekend. It stars Catherine Newton as well as Cole Sprouse. And that's not Dylan Sprouse, who is Trevor in the After series, but Cole Sprouse, who is Jughead in Riverdale. And it also has Lisa Soberano. Yeah, there we go. Who plays Lisa's stepsister Taffy. She's like pretty adorable here. She's like bubbly, a little ditzy, a little oblivious, honestly. And Joe Crest, who plays Dale, both Lisa and Lisa's dad and Taffy's stepdad, and Carla Gugino, who plays Janet, the Lisa's stepmom and Taffy's actual mom. And I bring up lesbianism because it's not in this movie, but this movie was written by Diablo Cody, who did Jennifer's Body, and that canonically is very bisexual. And these are supposed to be in the same universe, actually. Like Lisa Frankenstein is supposed to be in the same universe as Jennifer's Body, which makes sense that Lisa is somehow able to bring a man back to life with a tanning booth. Anyway, so I was watching Abigail and I was like, okay, Catherine Newton, who plays Sammy, looks so familiar. Don't know what's going on. And same with Alicia Ware. They're both having pretty big years, I guess. Well, Matilda came out last year, I think. But Catherine went from being in her own movie, Lisa Frankenstein, to being in this movie. So I'm like, okay, y'all are just, at least with Catherine, it seems like she's doing more of like a dark horror adjacent sort of path, which is cool. You know, maybe she's gonna be next Scream Queen or another Scream Queen, like how Mia Goth is doing all of her stuff. Oh, now my boy is sleeping. Finally, Jesus. Uh, but yeah, so Lisa is a depresso girl. She's not goth yet, but she gets goth later. Honestly, I'm like, how? You know what? It's supposed to take place in the 80s. Obviously, she's dealing with grief because she saw her biological mom, get murdered, but her stepmom is a bitch, actually, and wants her to be happy. Like now. She's like an almond mom before almond moms because actually, I'm gonna have to look into that because I want to say almond moms were more of a thing in the 90s, early 2000s, but we'll do a fact check later. And so Lisa is so polar opposite from Taffy, who has a lot of friends. She's a popular girl. I think she's done pageants. She's a cheerleader, all this stuff. And yeah, Lisa is, I mean, she's got a crush on a guy that is alive. Yeah. But she tends to this graveyard of bachelors who died, I think, I don't want to say virgins. but probably virgins and didn't end up with anyone. And she's really attracted to essentially Cole Sprouse's bust. I think he's literally just called the creature. I don't think he has a name. But anyway, at some point she says to him, or his gravestone, that she wishes he was alive and how she wanted to be together with him. And then his grave gets struck by lightning and he somehow makes it to her house and she's freaked out because what the fuck? Because zombie. But he isn't a zombie. He actually, again, this is some like crazy supernatural universe because somehow he knows what's going on and everything. And slowly but surely, they realize that if they replace different parts of him and put him in this tanning booth, it will attach to him and work because he comes out of the grave missing a hand. So the first thing they do is try to find a hand, and he does all the killing, most of the killing in this movie, actually. So there's a like sort of nerdy guy that Taffy wants to set Lisa up with because she doesn't want Lisa to be alone. I'm like, that's nice, but and I was giving the nerdy guy the benefit of the doubt, but he ended up being a pervert. He was trying to touch her, and they end up axing off his hand and sewing it onto the creature's hand, and now he has a hand. And then slowly but surely, people start dying or missing, and they assume it's either Lisa or this other goth chick. And it's like, why would you assume it's the goth? But they weren't wrong because one of them was a part of it. Anyway, her stepmom is wanting to commit her to an asylum because she doesn't like her, and her dad doesn't know this is happening, but her dad is also very much a pushover. Like, he just is letting the stepmom get away with everything, which is crazy. Just crazy. But so the stepmom's supposed to go out of town anyway, and the creature ends up killing her and also taking her ear because he needed an ear, you know? The last thing that he needs is also a penis, a weenus. And obviously, Lisa is like, all right, well, the walls are closing in on me. I'm not gonna be able to get away with this. Like, this is crazy. Like, I'm gonna go to prison. So before that, I want to at least sleep with my crush. And so she makes it to his house. And then she finds out that Taffy's been sleeping with him. Of course. And then the creature comes out of nowhere and chops his dick off. So now the creature has the dick of her crush. That's crazy. No, this movie was kind of wild, actually. I mean, I was very into it until there was like this weird scene where at some point you realize that Lisa doesn't really like the creature like that. She very much likes this other guy, Michael, way more. But for some reason, she sort of has him, the creature, pleasure her, I guess. It was just like really weird. It was like a weird scene. It felt unnecessary and it felt too soon in the movie. And it kind of just gave me a bad taste in my mouth. I was like, oh, I don't like this actually. Why is this here? Actually. I mean, like, she spends a bunch of moments being like repulsed by him, by how he smells and stuff. So I don't know what. Yeah, no, it was a weird scene. Diablo Cody, you be doing weird stuff. Yo, do weird stuff. I mean, they also made Juno, and I haven't seen it, but my friend has seen it, and definitely didn't like that movie. And I was always like, "Ugh," about that movie whenever I saw trailers about it and stuff. So I was like, mm. Like I watched Jennifer's Body, not knowing that Diablo Cody, not knowing that Diablo Cody made that movie as well when I watched it. And I remember the advertising for that movie was it there was so much focus on Jennifer Fox's character. Like, I didn't fully know what it was about, but it was obviously being marketed towards like teen boys and stuff when it's like, no, you should have marketed this to girls. Otherwise it wouldn't have been a box office flop. But whatever. Anyway. I had to pause because dicks were getting chopped off. But to go back, they, they know. I got distracted. She knows she's not gonna get away with this. Okay, I'm really distracted. Saw Eddie G. I needed to know what this was. Magic bullet. Okay. Anyway, oh, Eddie G. He's so good. He's a good actor. I'm like literally on the webpage for Dracula's Daughter, and they're for some reason playing all these trailers for old movies on IMDb for Dracula's Daughter. Very, very confused. I'm probably gonna put the trailer during this part so y'all understand what I'm seeing at the same time. But anyway, just gotta not go look at my screen. Anyway, so they're being chased by the police. They make it to the tanning booth, and they Lisa puts herself in it essentially to kill herself, but also bring herself back to life because it's got a way to bring people back to life essentially, or in theory that's what's going to happen, right? So there's a little bit of like, oh, is she going to live? And she does, and it's cute. She ends up with the creature in the end, and he gains his voice again, and she essentially has like all these burns through her body. I'm assuming anyway, because she's wrapped up, and it ends with her laying on him, being read to in the park. And I thought that was cute. We do get some of his backstory actually during the movie. Like it's a really cool animated sequence. I was like, ooh, I like this. And speaking of Zelda Williams, Robin Williams' daughter, directed this. This is actually her directorial debut, which is awesome. I think she did a really good job. I am definitely looking forward to other stuff that she does. And yeah, that's all the movies I planned on talking about. If I hopefully do this before the end of May, I will see you all in June. If I release this in the beginning of June, I will probably release 2 videos because I do want to do a pride centric movie something. Like I want to do more like pride themed movies like I was saying, Dracula's Daughter. That's like the lesbian Dracula movie. Also, I saw the TV Glow, and that one is very much a trans allegory. Like it's almost like a cautionary tale, if you will. And I definitely want to talk about that. So yeah, it's been fun. I think this is gonna be so fun. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.